Welcome to the Night Tube. I'm Stephen Knight, and I'm very fortunate to be joined by two guests this week. With me is Mooniter. Mooniter, hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Entirely my pleasure. And with us as well is Elnaz Sarbar Boczek. Which one of them names did I just crucify, Elnaz?
You did great. Elnaz Sarbar Boczek. Yeah. No. So hello, and thanks for having me as well.
Very welcome. Again, entirely my pleasure. It might be worth mentioning that I saw you both on a British news channel, GB News, with my friend Andrew Doyle, and that had quite a big reaction. He kind of delved into areas and topics we don't usually hear mainstream news media channels touch on. I saw him this weekend, actually, and I think I mentioned that I'd stole you both, so it's totally okay. This is fine. But, I mean, it might be a good point to start with how we describe what you two do. Would you say you're a human rights activist, Iranian human rights activist, women's rights activist? Elnaz, how would you describe what you are? Elnaz, rather.
Yes. Yeah. Don't worry about it. I'm used to it. I just go by Ellie in the Starbucks and other coffee shop places, so no worries about that. And yes, I do identify as a women's rights activist. I think for the past 4 years, it's been more of a concern to me. There was a point I realized I was living outside Iran and I was scared of Islamic Republic, living in California, 7,000 miles away. And at that point, I decided that I really seriously need to change it. And if, you know, the backstory is like there was this Iranian girl, Mooniter Hijab, who was a dancer on Instagram. She was arrested by the government, and I love dancing. I was 7 years old, and I put like videos in front of me and imitate Azerbaijani dancers. So I was like, I'm going to publish a video in support of this awesome woman. And then my second thought was like, if I do that, I might, get in trouble when I go back to Iran. And then it hit me. I was like, oh God, I'm still carrying all that trauma, all that fear inside me. And then I decided to change that. And then, I called my friend at that time, Masha Amini, and I said, I want to work for you. I'm going to translate stuff for you and do work, more seriously to get our voice out.
Well, you're certainly doing that for sure. Mooniter, how would you describe what you do?
I'm all about equality, to be really honest with you, as much as people may, because after the interview that we had with GB News, a lot of people thought that we're trying to stop people from practicing their religion. And that's not the goal. So I'm all about equality. I'm all about humanity. But as a female, I identify as a female. So for me, that aspect of it is a little bit more important considering where I'm from and what's happening to women in Iran. So right now, the priority may be women, but I'm all about equality.
That's a good answer.
That's how I identify.
Elnaz, just explain a little bit your connection to Iran then.
Well, I was born in Iran in 1980, so I was born 1 year after the revolution, the Islamic Revolution.
So it was your fault, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
When I was in the womb, I planned all this. So I grew up in Iran. I went to college there, and I had a brother I have a brother, that's a 1 year old younger than me. So we grew up together. And when Mooniter says about equality, I really identify with that because that's how you experience it firsthand. Like the first thing that put us apart is a passport photo of me and my brother have together. And we are, side to side. I think I'm 6 and he's 5, and I have to wear a scarf in that passport photo. And it's mandatory. I definitely did not want to have it. My parents were not religious, so they wouldn't want to have a scarf on hair of a 6-year-old, but the government imposed that. And starting there, I could feel the difference of, you can't do this. Why not? Because you're a girl. And it continues. Like when I go to school, I have to wear the scarf or the there's something called maqna'eh, which is basically a scarf that's sewn under your chin, so make sure it's not falling off. And it's part of the schoolgirl's uniform, so you have to wear it every day. And I hated it. And, Mooniter, I'm sure Mooniter is, moving her hair in approval that we all hated it, but we had to wear it. So I could see that inequality as I grew up.
That's what she's talking about. That's me.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's me.
You look like a Studio Ghibli drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the nicest possible way.
Yeah, so we tried to not wear it as much as possible. I remember I was 8 years old, and me and my brother went to the same school. So in Iran, schools are segregated. Boys and girls go to different schools. And because of the shortage of a school, my brother and I went to same school but different shifts. So at the mornings, he would go to school. In the afternoon, I would go. And the next week, we'd swap the shifts. And my brother was sick that day, and my mom sent me to the school and says, go to school, find the headmistress, and tell her that your brother is sick. He's not coming to school. I was like, okay. And, it's fall, so I'm wearing a yellow jacket, and the jacket has a hoodie. So I'm like, my hair is covered. I'm going to go to the school with a jacket and hoodie and no maqna'eh and no scarf. And I walk to school and find the headmistress and like, hey, my brother's not coming. And she looks at me and say, well, why aren't you at the class? I was like, I'm a girl. And then she was like, well, why aren't you here without a scarf? I was like, my head is covered. And she was like, no, you can't do this. Never come to school without your maqna'eh. So, it's our identity was kind of defined with that as a child, which was hard. And for me, seeing my brother doing all that stuff and me being, oh, you can't do this, kind of put me in touch with this. And I'm sure I can go on an hour and share your experience of when I felt this misogyny, this oppression, this disparity between men and women through my life. And it got me to a point that I decided to leave Iran. Actually, I was a teenager when I decided to leave Iran, most prominently because I thought I would never want to have child, especially a girl, introduced into this world because it was so painful. And eventually I left the country when I was 28, and I've been living in the U.S. since.
Okay. Mooniter, your connection to Iran?
I was also born and raised in Iran. I finished my high school in Iran, and just like Elnaz, as age of 7, as we want to enter school, we are required, it's mandatory for every girl to wear a hijab in order to be in order to get permitted to have education. So that's one barrier that women have in Iran. It's the government forcing them to wear hijab in order to get educated, and then there's another layer, which is their family. If the dad or the husband is okay with the woman to get educated. So the layers of misogyny pretty much goes deeper and deeper because there is. We're gonna get into this later. Let me finish introducing myself. I remember going to school for the first day, and we had to have that on, and I didn't want to. When we got into the queue in order to enter our classes, I remember telling my mom that I don't want this. This is not me. I don't want this. I never wore this before. And all of a sudden, imagine all of a sudden you never wore this, and you're 7 years old. They introduce it to you, and they're like, "Yeah, put it on your head." And then go there. And you're just like, what? And for 9 months, you have to wear this every day, go sit in the class with something that you absolutely hate. So imagine forcing someone to do this for 13 years from elementary through high school, and then after that in university as well. It was traumatizing. And when we express our feelings to people, and then they're just like, well, it's your culture. And they were like, it's not my culture, because up until 1979 in my country, hijab was not mandatory. So it's really not my culture. That even hurts more than the trauma that we went through. That people just say a sentence and they're like, well, it's your culture, you know? It's hurtful. It hurts our soul.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely get onto the sort of cultural relativism of that later. Maybe you could both talk a little bit about the structure then, the hierarchy of Iran, and what role religion plays in terms of the state. Maybe Elnaz, you can pick that up, and Mooniter, feel free to jump in and add to it.
Yeah. Before we get that, I just realized I never answered your question fully. What's my connection with Iran? So now I've been in, just want to add a little bit more to that I've been in the US for 14 years. I've been back to Iran several times after that. And I keep in touch a lot with some friends in Iran and with the news in Iran, especially in the recent years and the recent past months. That's been very, very crucial. But now going back to your question, I hope I don't jump ahead of myself, about the structure of religion. So when Iranian people did their revolution in 1979, they put some good basic structure in the constitution. So we have a lot of elections, and that's one of the main questions people ask me. Is like, you have elections, how you say this is a theocracy? Why do you say this is a dictatorship? So we have a basic structure of electing a president, electing city councils, but on top of that, we have basically three things that make this a dictatorship. One is the power the supreme leader has it. And I usually want to laugh when I say supreme leader 21st century. I was like, I always laughed at North Korea. And then later on, I thought about it. I was like, oh, we are in the
Sounds like something from Star Wars, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah. So he has power over something called the Council of Guardians, or Guardian Council. The Guardian Council is made of half lawyers and half religious figures, and they are directly or indirectly elected by the supreme leader. And they have oversight of all elections in Iran, the presidential elections and all the city councils. So everybody that is not approved by them cannot run as a candidate, period. So that's one. The second one is the army and the military is under control of the supreme leader. It's not under control of an elected official. Even that's like the facial, elected. When we say elected, they're not truly elected, but even another under that. And the third piece is they put that religious laws should be applied to the laws of the country, and they kind of take precedence over the other laws that we have in the country, which is something I'm not for. I think, especially at this point, Iranian people really want the separation of church and state. And that's the third part that, for me, makes the laws in Iran turn into whatever it is.
What people also, I feel like your listeners can, if they don't know, prior to 1979, Iran was a Muslim majority country. We were a Muslim majority country, but not necessarily our laws were taken from Islamic laws or straight from Quran verses. So we were a Muslim majority country. We had other minority religious that lived there. They could have practiced their religion, and we did it once 1979 revolution happened, because the name it's on it was an Islamic revolution. And once that happened, they changed the entire constitution and based everything on Islamic laws. And we know in Islam, women don't get treated well. We know in Islam, there's apostasy, there's death penalty for apostasy. We know in Islam, homosexuality is not accepted. So all of these was put into our constitution, and they enforce it. So the officials actually enforce it now in the past 40 years. So that's where the disconnect is. Otherwise, we were a Muslim majority country, but we've never had such events happening to bring it to this extent that we are witnessing right now, for women to get beat on the streets by the police. There was prior to 1979, there was social freedom. People could dance, people could go to clubs, people could drink alcohol. But right after 1979, they immediately, a year after, they came out and they said, no, women need to wear hijab, no alcohol, no clubbing, no going to stadiums for women. Women cannot swim. You cannot join the national team to swim unless, you wear the fully covered bikini.
Burkini.
Burkini, yeah.
That's the site.
So people need to realize that we were a majority Muslim country, but it's different now because the laws are taken directly from Islam. That's the problem. That's the issue.
Right. Well, I'm getting a very strong sense of sort of secular liberalism from you both. And I know you both had, various degrees of an Islamic upbringing. And it kind of invites the question as to where you are philosophically now. I mean, I'm not asking you to apostatize yourself or anything if it's uncomfortable, but I'm just wondering where you are in terms of adherence to the Quran now, given your Muslim cultural heritage.
Yeah, I actually identify as an atheist, I got to say. We had to study Quran and Arabic in school, and I hated both. And then later on, I looked at it. I know other languages. I was like, Arabic was a language. I should have slain it. It was awesome, but I hated it at the time. And that was because all the pressures that we felt, like, really, I guess I could say the trauma we suffered through religion is extreme. And then I would say I am a skeptic person. So for me, anybody who says definitely, unless it's a scientific thing and it's math, I'm like, I look at things with doubt. So I live my life as an atheist at this point. And, I shared this with you earlier. My last name, my second last name, which I got from my husband, which actually in Polish, my last name means bacon. And I was like, I was married before. I never adopted any of my husband's last name because I kind of like an independent woman. But this time I was like, I really cannot pass up this opportunity as an ex-Muslim to have bacon in my last name. I'm going for it, and I love bacon. And that's where I stand. And I really think that we should separate church and state everywhere in the world, because if you look at the religion and you're like, not all of these can be true, right? From a standpoint of any religious person, everybody else is going to hell. So there's no truth in there. I'm sorry to say. These are stories we tell ourselves to make our lives better, to be able to cope with anxiety of death and freedom. So to me, I'd rather look at life with more skepticism and be a step away from having concrete opinions and some stuff that we're not sure if they're the truth.
Okay, so Elnaz is going straight to hell. Munita, how about you?
So I believe that, I don't know how many Iranians have you, do you know in your life, or have you met in your life?
A fair few. Spent a bit of time with one at weekend, actually. Shout out to my friend Amir, if he's watching.
And how many of those Iranians that you've met or know identify proudly as a Muslim?
None.
Iranians in general never proudly consider themselves Muslims, and they just don't want to even talk about it. They do not want to be identified with Islam, or put in the same sentence literally with Islam, because from the beginning that we were born, literally the minute you were born from a Muslim parent, they sing it in your ear that you're a Muslim. Literally, this is a custom that we have. They sing it in your ear that you're a Muslim Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. They say these things to you that you believe in only one God.
Haven't you just converted to Islam again now? Isn't that the rule? Was that the Shahada?
Yes, that's the
Right,
Shahada.
so you're a Muslim again. These are the rules. You've got to be careful.
I just said it.
Yeah.
So from the minute you come out of your mom's womb, you are a Muslim. And any minute in your life, in the country that you're living, and it's an Islamic country, you decide that you no longer want that, you are doomed to die. And the law in Iran makes that happen. So who wants that? Who wants something like this? So we never wanted to identify as a Muslim, and we were never the true Muslims. That's why we're clashing with our government, because that's an Islamic regime that's forced on us, and we just don't want it. Nothing against, like, if we say we don't like, we dislike Quran, that doesn't mean that we dislike the Arabic language. I just can find many more books that are more factual and are more interesting to read and learn it from, but not Quran. I don't want to read something that's telling me that Jews are, what's the word that they use? And nothing in Quran
Kafir.
for Jews. The Jews are the Jews are kafir, or if you see if you see someone that doesn't believe in Allah or Muhammad, it's okay for you to kill them. You'll be awarded later in heaven with 72 huris. I don't like that. And I don't think anybody in the world should promote that. And these are facts. These are facts in Quran. It's not something made up that we're just coming up with it. These are literally facts that are there.
No, I agree.
I'm a non-believer, so for your viewers, I'm a non-believer.
Okay, so we're all going to hell. At least there's a consensus there. That's great. Okay, so, I mean, I suppose before we get on to the current civil unrest in Iran and get your thoughts on that, it might just be worth a brief digression on the hijab, because it's a topic of contention, especially here in the UK. It is worn by a lot of the Muslim population. I think the Muslim population in the UK definitely slants towards a conservative interpretation, unfortunately, which is, it can cause a few obvious problems, as you might imagine. But tell me about the Islamic injunction for the hijab. What is the theological reasoning behind compelling young girls and women to cover their hair? And why are Western feminists making sort of cultural relativist noises about it? So it's a kind of a two-part question. I don't know if, Elnaz, you want to kick us off with that?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I never got it. I never got it why women should cover their hair. Specifically, I think the hair is the thing. I mean, I think Muslims look at it as like the modesty. They're like, oh, women should cover themselves so the men's are not aroused. And that is, to me, raises a lot of questions. I'm like, okay, so is men's hair is not sexy enough for them? So is that why, we don't ask men to cover their hair? Or, are we saying that women do not have sex drive? So the men should not cover their hair? And, those was questions for me. At the same time, there's nothing sexy about the hair. I mean, it's attractive, but, the women, by doing that, I feel like they're reducing women into a sex object. That's all you can see when you look at a woman, is a production tool. And, and you want to cover it. You don't want to see it. And to me, it's an insult to both men and women, because you're reducing women into nothingness by covering them, and then you're telling men you don't have control over yourself, so women have to cover themselves. So I really have problem with the concept of it as well. I think there is verses about it in Quran that I think the verse is something that this prophet tells his women to cover themselves, and I think the verse actually is some people interpret it as they have to cover their breasts, and then some interpretation is like, oh no, they have to cover their hair, and then Taliban goes as far as, oh, you have to cover everything. I don't want to even see your face, which is so painful. Like the activist Yasmin Mohammed has a description of what it feels like to be in that tent, basically, and it's so powerful that you read it and you're like, yeah, you're reduced to nothingness. And I feel that nothingness as a woman who had to cover themselves. I feel I was reduced to something less. And I feel with that, you are really reduced to nothing. So I guess part of it is like, it's an imbalance tool. It's an tool that makes women less powerful, the way I see it. And I think Islamic Republic definitely use it as a tool to control half of the population. So that's there. And now about women who live outside of Iran, whenever I see a woman in hijab, I am surprised. I am genuinely like, the question in my mind is, are you wearing this? Because if you don't wear it, your father is going to not give you money, or like, your mother is going to criticize you, because even though those are small things, but they affect, if you're a child, that affects your psyche a lot. If your mother doesn't love you because you're not wearing a scarf, you're going to wear it. Right. So where is this choice? And I see why Muslims communities stuck to it, but at the same time, I don't understand why Muslim women accept that.
I want to go back a little bit and take a step closer and look at it from the definition aspect of it. The meaning of hijab in Arabic means barrier. And barrier in English means a fence or an obstacle that prevents movement or access. So this is the meaning of it. So now, when you put it in the context, hijab is literally like a fence for us. It's a fence that hides us from the world, that puts us somewhere that people cannot see it. So it's as if it's making you invisible in the society. So therefore, you cannot communicate properly with the society. When you withdraw from the society and you cannot communicate with the society, then you go in this state of depression, and then that's when. Are we allowed to swear here?
You can say whatever you fucking
and that's
like.
when shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
So the definition of it itself, I think, has a lot to say to people who are trying to figure out what hijab is and how it works. And to go back to what Elnaz said, it's sort of, because when you put hijab on a 7-year-old, like I have a 4-year-old and I have a 2-year-old. My daughter is 2 and my son is 4. So when I take my son to school in Canada, and I see his classmates come to school, and I see girls as young as 4, 5. They're wearing hijab in Canada in 2022. So I just look at it and I really truly want to understand people, because we were forced. Like, my mother was forced to put it on me because she didn't want me to stay illiterate. If I wanted to get educated, I had to wear it. It was a law. But for me, I want to understand people, why they decide to do it. Just like Elnaz, why here? Why do they decide to do it here? And I just can't wrap my head around it. We just don't understand it. But going back to what Elnaz said, when you put it on a 6-year-old, it's as if you're making a 6-year-old a sex object. And when you're making a 6-year-old a sex object, and then on the other side, you have Islam allowing child marriage. So when you put the two and two together, now in the connection with the feminism outside of Iran, which are against any of that, sexualizing women and child marriage. I mean, all feminists are against that. So this is where my disconnect is with the Western feminism. I don't understand, how can you support something that is literally offering this?
Yeah.
We should not.
Absolutely.
So that's where the disconnect is, if I explained it right.
No, that's a great answer. Sorry, Elnaz, go ahead.
No, I just want to add to that, like the psychological implication of that are immense. As a girl, you don't learn how to say no, because you are imposed on the simplest choice, that is wearing your clothes. Something is on you, and something says, hey, there's a big difference between you and the men. You have to cover yourself. So I would say that creates a balance in power. I'm sorry, power imbalance. Sorry.
Yeah, I knew what you meant. That's a great point.
I'm dyslexic a little bit. Yeah, a power imbalance between men and women. I really don't get how Western feminists could get behind that. They should understand this better than anyone, and yet they're not there. And sometimes I'm like, why? Is this just because we are Middle Easterners? Is that what,
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because I was very naive, because I used to spend a lot of my time taking shots at Christianity and poking fun at it, and I had a good time doing that, because I had sort of a culturally Christian understanding, so I knew scriptures and things like that. Then I kind of pivoted my attention towards Islam and started doing exactly the same thing. And people would scream racist at me. I'd be like, what? Hey, what? So it came as a bit of a shock to me. So I think there's sort of a hierarchy of oppression, isn't there? I think obviously women's rights are high up there, especially children's rights are high up there. But when you throw in the culture of a predominantly non-white nation, I think it makes a lot of people uncomfortable to sort of point the finger strange. Whereas I don't care about those things. I'm sort of caring about the principle and the human right, as clearly you two are as well. But I imagine it must be frustrating when somebody who's quite privileged in the true sense of the word, who hasn't suffered this sort of oppression, sort of goes to bat for these cultural norms, these conservative Islamic norms.
Exactly, and that's going back to what I said at the beginning. Well, isn't it your culture? Literally, that's what you're saying. Like people are saying that people in the West are like, it's their culture, so let's not call it out. But that's not right, because people are getting killed because you think it's someone's culture, and that shouldn't be a message that we should be giving the world from the free world that we live in. This is not something that we should be advocating for.
Yeah, but even if people are not get killed, like that's the extreme case, right? I mean, I feel that we should let ourselves criticize other cultures as well. Like I know people are talk about female genital mutilation, right? You can step back and say, oh, that was part of the culture in Africa. Should we just sit aside and look at it, or should we actually allowed to criticize that? I think it's we should be a little bit more open about criticizing each other, because that is how we as a human race improve. We look at each other and it's like, oh, actually, I don't think what you're doing right. And if we say it in the nice words and we say it without intentions, I'm pretty sure when you talked about Islam, you had no hatred against Muslim. This was about being criticized.
The ideology. It's about the ideology. Exactly. It's not about a person.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I feel like this is also a disfavor to Muslims, because there's going to be a point that this is going to be too hard. And if I know Christianity, like no Christians at this point denies that we had the Dark Ages. No Christian denies that we had witch hunting, or we had the Spanish Inquisition. And that's how Christianity was able to reform itself. And now, like, we are having churches that are accepting LGBTQ, while 50 years ago, 100 years ago, that was not acceptable. So if we are shouting Islamophobia and we basically shut up people like you, the Islam will not have the chance to reform itself, which I think is, imperative if they want to have a continuation of a big population of Muslims, and if they want to stay relevant in the coming years. I mean, I hate to say that, because, from my point of view, I say, put religion aside, but at the same time, I feel like that is important part of what Islam should go through as a religion of, especially if they want to claim their religion of peace, they really have to work on these issues. You can't kill people and you can't say, oh, whoever turns from Islam, I'm going to kill them. Whoever criticizes Islam, I want to kill them, like that teacher's, school teacher in France. And then claim I'm the religion of, and then claim I'm the religion of peace.
I think it was Bill Maher who said it's the religion of peace, in the sense of there's a peace over here and there's a piece over here and there's a piece over there, which is very clever. Mooniter, go ahead.
I was going to talk about, actually mention Charlie Hebdo, what happened over there too. That's a great example. And also, slavery was a culture at one point.
This is true.
So should we have said, well, it's our culture, and we shouldn't stop it? Same thing goes towards Islam too. Yeah,
I agree. It definitely shouldn't be exempt from the forces of modernity and progression, for sure. So, since I've got two Iranian rights activists here, it's very uncertain times in Iran at the moment. There's a lot of civil unrest. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about the catalyst for that. It's a young girl, is it Masha Amini?
Masha Amini, yes.
Masha Amini. Maybe you can explain who she is, and I think that might be the honour police coming for you now. Can anyone hear sounds?
God, let me mute that.
It's not me, is it? Is that me? Have they finally caught up with you?
Yeah, they actually, they tried to kidnap an Iranian journalist in the U.S., so yeah.
Wow, maybe I shouldn't joke. Yeah.
No,
thoughts and prayers.
No, they did. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Masih Alinejadand. I'm sure you've seen her.
Yeah, she's a hero, for sure.
She's my go-to. So she was 2 years ago, I believe. It was about 2 years ago, right, Elnaz? 2 years ago, she was targeted to get kidnapped, by the Iranian regime, and from the States to be taken to Venezuela, and from there to be heading back to Iran, because Venezuela is obviously one of the regime's allies in that part of the world. So. That was their first attempt, and then a couple of months ago, before the death of Masha Amini, they arrested someone in front of her house with a loaded gun. So, and the person was Muslim, and it happened to be a supporter of the regime. So the conclusion is it's not confirmed yet, but put the two and two together, Now, going back to what happened to Masha Amini. Masha Amini was a 22-year-old girl from the Kurdish province in Iran. She traveled to Tehran, which is the capital city of Iran, to visit some family. She goes out for a stroll with her brother, and she gets stopped by the morality police. I don't know if we will get a chance to tell you some of our stories with morality police, but they're kind of funny.
I hope so.
So then she gets stopped by the morality police, and they take her into custody. But from when she got arrested and when she was taken into custody, a series of events went on, but things weren't documented. So we didn't see anything. She gets arrested. We don't see anything. And then the camera footage from within the police station comes out. And she's talking to one of the officers, female officers there. And all of a sudden, she faints. And bam, she goes straight to a coma. A healthy 22-year-old young woman. So the family immediately puts the news out there. And there's no investigation, but the regime on TV, on state TV, they came and they said that she was suffering from a heart attack or previously, and the family came and said, no, our child had no past history of any sort of a disease. She was fully healthy. And later they find out that there has been injuries to her head, and it's from beating with something. I mean, we don't know what happened, if they smashed her head to a wall or something, but that's the cause of her death. So this pretty much enraged all Iranians, and they started protesting. The protests started in one city, and all of a sudden, within a span of 3 days, it spread out throughout the entire country, because everybody that has a daughter or has a mother or has a sister identified with that, because this could have happened to any woman in Iran. So therefore, it created this unity for all Iranians, and it gave this courage to all Iranians to stand up and speak up about it. I hope that I gave a good description of what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Death,
Elnaz, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I want to add to that I think that kind of broke a dam for Iranians, because, I mean, definitely hijab is an issue, but there's a lot of other things going on. There's oppressions of minorities, ethnic minorities, the Kurdish people, the Baluchi people. They do not get educated in their own language. They are usually oppressed by the government.
They barely get birth certificates.
Yeah. Yep. And they're religious minorities, like Baha'is, that they cannot go to universities. They can't get jobs in the government. They are really, they're arrested. After the revolution, their properties were confiscated for no reason at all. So, there's that. There's poverty. There's more than 50% of the country is in poverty. There is mismanagement. There's corruption, because we had one ruler for 33 years in an unchecked power. So there's parts of Iran that have water issues. There is a Lake Urumia in northwest of Iran that's drying up. There is all sorts of issues that are coming from this lack of transparency and lack of accountability that is flaring up. So, once shit hit the fan, like, everybody's so fed up that this is on top of it. This was just like, the last bit that broke a dam, I would say. The dam is definitely cracked, and now people are in the street. This is day 30, I believe.
Yeah, it's going to get marked as a month. Yeah.
So is the civil unrest still quite intense then? I mean, is there a feeling that this may lead to something bigger? This has become more than just justice, about justice for this one girl.
It has already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I explain something here? I just want to insert something here quickly. It has already. People on the street are no longer asking for an investigation on what happened to Masha Amini. People are on the street saying, we're done with this. Death to the dictator. We're over with this. We don't want this anymore. They're very clear with delivering that message. Very clear. And the chants that they come out are so transparent, so easy to understand, that it cannot be ignored with the society. And I just wanted to say this. When Elnaz said that all of these other issues, she's listed all of these other issues that are occurring in Iran. They're ongoing issues, treatment of minorities, all of this has been happening in Iran for the past 40 years. We've had executions of thousands of people over days in Iran in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So these things have happened in Iran, but they never made it out.
Yeah.
Why they never made it out, and this time it made it out, because now women's rights is the topic of the conversation around the world. So that's an issue itself. So we're focused on women's rights so much, on Me Too and all of that, that we're seeing so many other deaths that's happening under other problems in the world, such as religious minorities are getting killed in Iran. You get what I'm saying? And they're denied education in Iran. just to give you an understanding, if you're a Muslim in Iran and there's a Baha'i person, for example, you get into an accident and you get into a car accident. Okay, so you're a Muslim, you hit a Baha'i person, and as a result of that accident, they die. That Baha'i person dies. As a Muslim, you have to pay when you kill someone in an accident, not an intentional murder, but when you kill someone in an accident, you have to pay something called a diya, meaning what do we call that? Blood money? Blood money.
Wow.
You have to pay up the blood money to the family of that person. So when it comes to Baha'is, if this happens to them, you don't have to do that. And the insurance. So this is put it in the law. So the insurance companies don't have to do it. So I just want you to understand the depth of it, how systematic it is. It's very systematic. But when a girl gets murdered, the entire world will know about it. Why? Because it's the topic of the conversation. So it's as if you got lucky this time.
But, on top of that, I think it's worth mentioning that in Frontline, we have middle schoolers in the street. You have high school girls in the street. They're coming out and they are brave. And what they say is death to dictator. And they are saying we are all Masha Aminis. And this is new. They are, me and Mooney felt the same way, but this is not what we did. These girls are brave. And I think, they had the social media to see how the outside world is. So there's a lot of knowledge there. They had the social media to actually express their true selves, that we actually don't want this. And I do want to get back to Masih Alinejadand and say she has been campaigning for 8 years at this point. And she taught Iranian women about social disobedience because she basically published a video of herself in 2014 saying, this is how she published a picture of herself without the hijab in the street with the hair open and said, this is how I feel. Do you feel the same way? And those people said, yes. She received thousands of pictures and she encouraged people, say, if you feel the same way, go in the street, go in public, take pictures of video of yourself and post them. So they get to express themselves. And I think the second brilliant thing that she did, she ran a campaign that was called My Camera is My Weapon. And she said, whenever somebody comes and harasses you on the street, or when the morality police comes to you, just take out your phone and take a video of it. And she introduced a witness to the oppression that was going on there. So Iranian women, at least some of them, learned to how to express their dissatisfaction about what was going on. And I feel that had an effect. And, these girls who are now in the street, they have seen, if they have been following her, they have seen this for 5 years, 8 years now. They grew up with that idea of I have some rights too, and I can express it. And I think that was kind of pivotal for what we're seeing, because my friend says the self-confidence she sees of the women in the street right now is unique, is never seen before. And my friend is, same age as me. She's about 40, in her early 40s, and she goes to the street as well, because this is issues that's affecting women so much.
That's amazing. How that's such a simple thing as filming these acts of oppression can make a big difference and sort of address the power imbalance.
I did notice when you tweeted about today's podcast, people inserted a few questions in there, and one of the questions was in regards to NAIC. And the National Iranian American Council, which is based in the States. And you did mention the issues that UK is having with the Islamic community. So I want to explain a little bit about NAIC and tell you how it kind of goes back to what's happening in UK. So NAIC is an Iranian American National Council, and they on their board they have and correct me, Elnaz, if I'm wrong, on their board they have well-educated people. We're talking about authors, journalists, they're the technically, I don't know how to explain this to you, but they're the woke Iranians.
Got you.
They're the woke Iranians. And during the protests, the previous protests in Iran, specifically 2009, just because these people were, as I said, they were intelligent people, they were in academia, and they were known people. So the Obama administration turned to them for advice on what's happening on what was happening in Iran at that time. And many of these people were inserted by the government of Iran in the States to push the propaganda of the Iranian regime, and that affected the movement that people started back then. So all of this resistance, it didn't just happen in a day. It has happened before. But they were led, the message was misinterpreted and was pretty much twisted when it came to the authorities in the States or to the world generally. And this gets done by spending money. So the regime is really spending money on these people, because when I say these are journalists, they're high-ranked journalists. We're talking about people like who write in the New York Times. We're talking about people who write in Washington Post. So these are really they could have an effect on the events that's happening. So now NAIC started in the US, but it's pretty much everywhere. And they have been seen in the UK as well. So now these people that get paid a lot of money to advocate for the regime are playing an very important role on what is happening in Iran. So I'm going to give you an example of what happened recently. Secretary Blinken met with 5 women last week in order to get briefed on what is happening in Iran and to have a better understanding. 5 out of 5 of these women, 2 of them decided not to show their face. So we don't know who actually was in that meeting talking to the Secretary Blinken from Iranians, sending our message to Secretary. We don't even know who that person is. And who they happen to be? Part of the NAIC. So it's that's how deeply rooted they are in the American system. And that's how deeply rooted they are in the UK. And that's not helping Iranians. So now Iranians are angry, frustrated. They're at the middle of a revolution in Iran right now. And they see that their voices are not getting anywhere. So on social media, when you're angry, when you're frustrated, what do? You don't think. You make irrational moves. So they get online and they try to exit all that anger, and they may say a slur or sexist something to these journalists, and they take it. And these are events that are happening currently that I'm telling you. They take it and they run with it. So they take a screenshot. Oh, I'm a woman journalist and I'm under threat. People are sending me death threat, this and that. And then it overshadows the reason why we're angry, because you're not doing your job properly. That's why we're angry. But I'm not cussing you off. I'm trying to have a conversation with you, but you embolden the people who are doing that to overshadow the current events, and for other people to see that, she's under attack. She's probably telling the truth, that the Iranians don't deserve the freedom that they're asking for, because they're not acting in the way that they deserve it. So this is getting frustrating for the people, and this comes with NAIC's effect on the current events that are happening in Iran right now, and how frustrated and angry people are. And I know I talked a lot, so just to sum it up, NAIC, the Islamic Republic, unlike what people think, is very smart. They have spent years and they have funded to have these people in place in the governments around the world. For these for these moments when Islamic Republic is hanging by a thread, for them to come and sew it back up as what they're doing right now, or otherwise, how can you explain a meeting with Secretary Blinken that's supposed to be open to public for everybody to know what happened in there, as the world is watching the current events in Iran, for them not to show or not to disclose the two people that were on that meeting trying to brief the secretary?
That's a lot, and I've got a feeling we could probably fill an entire podcast on that organisation and their sinister way of operating. But I really want to get your opinion on a very topical event at the moment, and that relates to the Iranian climber. Your namesake, I think, in fact, is it Elnaz Rekabi? It's another name I'm going to butcher today.
The rock climber, Elnaz Rekabi, yes.
Great. So go ahead, Elnaz.
No. So as you might know, Iranian athletes are forced to appear with hijab in every international competitions. And she decided, and Sunday actually, she was attending the finals of rock climbing in Asian rock climbing in in Korea.
South Korea?
South Korea,
South Korea.
And
That's the good one. That's the good Korea.
Yes, that's the good one. Yeah. South of the border.
The one with no supreme leader.
Yes, that one. She decided to appear without a scarf, and that was a bravery act. She climbed with her hair showing, and all of us went, "Hey, go girl, you rock!" And so, and what happened was, at this point, I think her Instagram account published basically a letter apologizing, which I think is an enforced apology, saying, making an excuse, saying, "Oh, the timing was wrong. I was caught off guard, and I had to go. That was a mistake of me."
And she's climbing up. She's in a competition climbing up, and it was a mistake.
Yeah, it was a mistake. Yeah, so somehow now she's a mistake. Her brother and her.
I think she said it'd fallen off in the official statement. I think that was the excuse, wasn't it? It seems very coerced.
Yeah, I guess she just did it in solidarity with what's happening with Iran, and her brother and her sister in Iran were arrested, and the officials announced that she's going to be going back to Iran, and she left the competitions 2 days earlier than scheduled. So I think she's under the pressure for what she did. But at the same time, I'm so happy and so proud of her for breaking this propaganda that Islamic regime put in power every day. It's like, oh, our athletes, look at our athletes. They are wearing hijab even when they're climbing.
They love it.
They love it. I was like, yeah. So, she's not the first. Nobody ever done it in competitions. There was other female athletes who
were out of Iran.
Yeah, she's the first who did it in the competitions. There were other athletes who had published their pictures without hijab, and they're kicked out of the team. But now she participated without hijab, and she is going to be a lot of pressure. And my heart goes for her, and I think we should say her name aloud and a lot. So hopefully she's safe. But I'm very worried about her, and at the same time, I really appreciate her courage to doing that and to breaking that lie that Islamic Republic has put up for the world in years. And that goes back to what Mooniter was saying, that the Islamic Republic spends a lot of money to put up this image. And, so sometimes I tell people, like, these guys are an established ISIS. Actually, our friend Masih says it a lot. They in terms of ideology, they have no difference with ISIS. They have no difference with Taliban, except that they have oil money. They're established. They speak English fluently, and they smile when they shake your hand. But honestly, their brain is the same as a Taliban. So don't buy this. And they are the cause of a lot of terror in the Middle East. They are the cause that we don't have peace in the Middle East. They're a big chunk of it. And if you really want peace in the Middle East, we have to get rid of this. And I'm happy Iranian people are doing it. We just want the outsiders not to save the Islamic Republic. Just let the Iranian people do their thing, support the Iranian people, please, and let us take care of our governments and fix it, but don't help them. That is what we are asking the world at this point. Like, don't help them.
Don't help them, help us.
Yes, kick out their diplomats. Do not give them any resources. Any resources they get at this point is going to be used against the Iranian people. And, don't give them their assets. Help the Iranian people have access to internet. And at this point, we are starting to see some strikes in Iran. Some of the contractors and the oil refineries started to strike. And I think that is another phase in having this, at this point, revolution. I think the protest happened. Now we are going to the phase that this getting close to be a successful revolution if their economic pathways are broken and the Islamic Republic has no power in the terms to oppress people.
Where Elnaz said that Islamic Republic there's no difference between Islamic Republic and ISIS, I just want to say that the only reason why the world kind of united to fight ISIS, it was just because they could identify them. They could see it and they could realize it. And that's the difference between the Islamic Republic and ISIS and Taliban. When you look at the Islamic Republic, you can't realize it. You think, oh, democratic country, as you mentioned, going back to what we talked about. They have an elected president. There is elections happening. So for the world, they can't realize it. But look at the footages that are coming out of Iran. Think about it. Do you really think if a government is elected by its own people, a cop on the street in broad daylight will slap a woman in the face with no consequence? Just think about that.
Or smash their head against the sidewalk. I mean, these are really brutal. But like you mentioned that before I forget, I want to mention Ukraine as well. Like, the world was supported behind Ukraine. And now we see the Islamic Republic helping Russia by providing drones, by providing missiles recently. Just yesterday, I heard that also there's missiles. So we are in the same boat as Ukrainians. If you are so helping Ukrainians, please help us as well. And the Iranian government is helping Russia in that regard. So if you see that, if you identify with that, I hope that you identify with us seeing the Islamic Republic in the image we see it as a terrorist group.
It's not a matter of keeping the Islamic Republic within the borders of Iran. They've been in the borders oppressing us, but right now they've taken the war directly into Europe. What else does a country have to do in order for a regime has to do in order for the world to realize that they're not helping the world? They're enemy of the entire world. They're trying to get nuclear power. Their missiles and drones are getting used in the Ukraine right now to murder Ukrainians who are standing up for their country and battling another dictator in the world. And now two dictators in the world have teamed up and attack Ukraine. So more reason for the world to side with us, as if they side with us, they're siding with the Ukrainians. And we are saying it out in the open on social media. We are with the Ukrainians. We support Ukrainians because we understand dictatorship. And we don't want that for anybody in the world. So this cry is for the world to realize Islamic Republic is far worse than what you think it is. And take actions. Please support us.
Well, thank you both for your incredibly comprehensive and passionate, and I'm almost ready to invade Iran on my own. After speaking to you, let's go. Yeah, I'm free this evening.
No, but then they're going to tell you that you're the white man who wants to just take over, colonize. You will be the colonizer.
Well, yeah, why not? I'm English. We've got plenty of experience in the colonization game. Maybe we can be done by midnight.
Canada too.
Yeah. No stopping us. I suppose I feel like we could speak for another couple of hours, of course. So hopefully you'll come back and speak to me another time, and hopefully there'll be better news coming out of Iran then. But maybe in the meantime, you could tell my listeners and viewers where they can find you on social media or anywhere else you might write or operate. Elnaz,
when you go first, I don't know my own handle.
Would you like me to tell you?
You can find me on Twitter, and my name is Mooniter. So moon, like the moon, Mooniter, Mooniter.
And I'm on Twitter as Elishka, ELISHKAA.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we would love to come back. You're just amazing.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been entirely my pleasure.
Thanks for having us. It was
Thank
awesome.
you.